Hi, it's Peter Schweizer, and welcome to the Drill Down. Well, the government is shut down in Washington, D.C. yet again. But could this situation be actually worse than people imagine? We're going to talk about that today with Eric Eggers. Eric, are you lacking any government services since the government is shut down?
No, I've been kind of living off the grid in a bunker with just Leave It to Beaver episodes on VHS that I watch that on a power grid that's run by hamsters. So I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that a lot of government services, of course, are continuing. They're shutting down things like Park Service and whatnot. But the first trigger is going to be October the 15th. That's when military payrolls are due, and those will not be filled if the government is still shut down. And then on October the 20th, other government workers have a payroll that's due. So those seem to be the triggers. But I want to talk today about what actually is going on, because we're getting two different narratives from Republicans and Democrats about what this dispute really is. And what essentially the mainstream media position seems to be. I'm looking at this article from the Associated Press. It says, claim Democrats shut down the government because they want to give free health care to immigrants who are entering the U.S. illegally. The AP says, the facts. This is false. And they go on and give an explanation. So let's try to unpack where the truth actually lies in this question of what this government shutdown is really about.
Yeah, so the claim is that the Republicans are not interested in funding illegal immigrant health care. And the Democrats, according to the Republicans, they say, well, this is what the main fight is. And we'll talk about, we have evidence that Caroline Levin, the White House, and Mike Johnson are presenting. But I think at the outset, it's about clearly they passed this bill. They passed the one big, beautiful bill. Republicans fought for it. They got it passed. And now the Democrats are attempting to relitigate some of those issues.
Right.
And they're saying, listen, the continuing resolution bill the Democrats offered had everything that's currently funded, but they had a few extras. And actually, here's John Kennedy going through some of the things that the Republicans have taken out once. The Democrats say, we'd like to reopen the government with these as well.
We found $3.6 million for pastry cooking classes and dance focus groups for male prostitutes in Haiti. I kid you not. I'm not making this up. That was in the budget under President Biden. We took it out. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez in the socialist wing, the loon wing of the Democratic Party, says we're going to shut down government until you put it back in. $4.2 million. We took it out. The Congresswoman and the socialist wing of their party says we've got to put that back in for the open government. $4.2 million for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people in the Western Balkans and Uganda. I could spend the rest of the afternoon here. We took all that out.
By the way, what I love about this is I'm imagining the interns who found these things in the budget. I found vasectomies in Africa. I found the dance troupe in Haiti. That's how the bowels of these things are hidden in this legislation all the time. And his point is that this is not just about the government being run. His allegation is the Democrats actually want other things funded that were taken out earlier.
And by the way, and I could be wrong, the podcast could come out this week and the government could be reopened and they got enough Democrats in the Senate to vote for it. But I think, when J.D. Vance first addressed this, he said we could potentially be looking at weeks. And despite the pressure points you said, I think it's because the Republicans currently have kind of everything they wanted. They took that stuff out. And oh, by the way, if the government stays shut down, they can use that as an excuse to not only keep those things out of the budget, but they can eliminate some of the government jobs they tried to eliminate before, back when Elon Musk was in charge. So I don't see the Republicans being in a big hurry to get this thing opened back up.
Yeah. Unless the public opinion switches and some of the more moderate Republicans get a little jiggy, I think, this is going to remain. So what's interesting to me is the Democrats' position is that immigrants in the U.S. that are in the U.S. illegally are not eligible for federal health care programs. And they say, so what the Republicans are saying is pure bunk. But that's actually not the case. That's technically true in terms of eligibility for the official programs, but there are all kinds of other ways in which the federal government is subsidizing health care for illegals. And we're talking about large sums of money.
We are talking about large sums of money. So correct. So in addition to the male prostitutes in Haiti that apparently AOC wants to be put back in, the big sticking point is there's healthcare programs that the Republicans say fund healthcare for illegal immigrants or people that shouldn't be here. The Democrats say that's clearly not true. You're not even allowed to do that. So we will tell you specifically why that matters and what's correct, what's not. But let's first back up. Is it true, Peter Schweizer? Is it wild to imagine that Democrats actually want to provide illegal immigrants with free health care? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's evidence for that, right?
There is in fact evidence. Now, I know it's been a minute because in 2024 we didn't have a debate for presidential candidates within the Democratic Party.
Right.
They sort of just did the whole coronation thing.
Yep.
They made the old guy leave and they put in the new person. But back in 2020, way back in 2020, actually 2019, they had so many people running for president.
There was like 8 or 10 of them, right?
There's at least 10. I think they even had to break it up into 2 stages. Like it was crazy because on here, you're going to see 10 people running for president, including Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Eric Swalwell, Marianne Williamson, Andrew Yang, all these people. And listen to a question from the debate for who gets to be the Democratic nominee for president in 2019.
A lot of you have been talking tonight about these government health care plans that you've proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay. Let me start with you, Mayor Buttigieg. Why?
Literally every single hand goes up, and of course there's wild cheering in the audience.
So, and this is for people who are trying to ascend to positions of power within the Democratic Party. By the way, Democrats are no longer in power. They're attempting to do so again. So I don't think it's like wild to assume that they're willing to adopt the same positions. Eric Swalwell is on that stage. Clearly is a fan of assuming what we can refer to as pro-immigrant positions. And he is saying, listen, like they're all in favor of this. So so this has been a policy they have supported before. And so now it becomes a question of, all right, well, what is really the truth now? So Caroline Leavitt, who from the White House takes the stage and shows reporters the specific provisions in the Democrats' proposal to reopen the government. And you have it right here. So we can hear from Caroline Leavitt. But just like on the stage, if you're listening to this, you will not see what's on there. So you're going to hear Caroline Leavitt describe this, and then you're going to hear Peter Schweizer say exactly what it says up on the screen.
The Democrats' current position is that the only way the American government can reopen is if illegal aliens can get free health care. Don't take my word for it, just look at what's inside of the Democrats' proposal to reopen the government. Their funding proposal would result in nearly $200 billion spent on health care for illegal aliens and other non-citizens over the next decade. To put this in perspective, $200 billion is enough money to fund the entire children's health insurance program, which provides health insurance to low-income children and women. Under the Democrats' proposal, the millions of illegal aliens who improperly were granted asylum and paroled under the Biden administration would once again be allowed to receive Medicare.
Yeah, so Caroline Leavitt is talking about the continuing resolution that the Democrats have introduced. This is what they say has to be passed, or they're not going to support funding of the government. This is page 57, section 2141, for those keeping track. And it lists a whole bunch of programs. They want to end the Medicare funding for most non-citizens, $6 billion. They want to stop that. They want to stop the enhanced FMAP for emergency care for illegal immigrants. That's $28 billion. The California loophole, we're going to talk about California in a minute. That's $34 billion. It goes on and on and on. Essentially, $192 billion, according to the Democrats' own continuing resolution. They want to reopen up loopholes and exceptions that allow for the funding. So they're being disingenuous when they say, well, you can't have Medicare as an illegal immigrant. That's technically true, except with certain loopholes, massive loopholes that are in place that account to up to $200 billion.
Yeah,
so what are some of those loopholes?
Well, that's one of the loopholes. Yeah. So, and J.D. Vance has addressed this. Kind of what it comes down to is like, what's the definition of an illegal immigrant? And that would be some people who entered the country illegally. But here's the problem. Under Joe Biden, the number of illegal immigrants became legal through non-traditional means. So that you have something called temporary protected status, or TPS. Those are people that come here and they say, well, there's a problem in their home countries, so they're allowed to be here and not be deported until whatever happens in their home countries is sorted out, whether it's a natural disaster or political upheaval, or maybe in Haiti's case, the government's been overrun by male prostitute dancers. Who knows?
But to be clear, these are people that illegally enter the country, but the government says you're not technically here illegally for the purposes of getting medical health care.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that number ballooned under Joe Biden from 400,000 to 1.2 million.
Yeah.
So that's one category of people
Just
that Republicans would say, hey, that's an illegal immigrant. Joe Biden's like, no, it's fine. There has been flooding in, Nicaragua or whatever.
Or there were dance riots in Haiti.
Oh, very possible. Also, Joe Biden did 2.9 million inadmissible migrants. There's so many different terms, right?
Yeah.
Inadmissible migrants, or migrants whose status has yet to achieve legality. But 2.9 million inadmissible migrants were allowed to enter via what's called parole, which gives them a fixed time to stay here before facing removal. But again, and we've talked about this on previous episodes of the Drill Down, because the Biden administration let so many people in, both in terms of open borders and through policies like expansion of TPS and parole, the backlog of these cases who are waiting for a hearing to then decide, do they have to go home or not, is insane. It actually went down last year. It went down from 3.7 million cases, or it went down to 3.6 million cases from 3.7. But the average wait time for people who are here awaiting a parole hearing is like 636 days.
Wow.
So assuming at some point, like, I'm not considering you a hypochondriac, but even you go to the doctor every couple of years,
Sure, of course.
So these are people whose status now, according to Democrat provisions, allowed them to access health care. Republicans sunset those provisions.
Right.
I mean, they closed them out during the one big beautiful bill thing that was passed, and that is essentially one of the sticking points that the Democrats are fighting over. So when the Democrats say, we refuse to let the government be reopened until some of these provisions are reintroduced, even though the Republicans kind of won this battle fair and square, like, that's why Republicans say the Democrats are shutting down the government unless they can give health care to illegal immigrants.
Yeah, so these TPS holders, the millions of TPS holders that Joe Biden created and minted as president, can access Obamacare subsidies as a result of this. And you have the whole issue of emergency rooms in hospitals. Somebody shows up, they're required by law to treat them. You can't turn somebody away, even if they're here illegally. Somebody ends up footing that bill. A lot of that is emergency federal aid that goes to those hospitals and to the healthcare system. Hospitals do receive Medicaid reimbursements, which would be reduced under Trump's bill for emergency care that they are obliged to provide to people who meet other Medicaid eligibility requirements but do not have eligible immigration status.
Yeah, and by the way, like what you just said is from the AP's article that says, oh, no, it's not true that the Democrats are saying. So even they concede that that hospitals receive Medicaid reimbursements. And again, that's the phrase, for people who otherwise would be eligible for Medicaid, but do not have an eligible immigration status. So it's like, well, so what's another way of saying that?
Right.
You're not eligible.
Right.
So,
exactly.
And by the way, like, even according to the AP article, that money that's spent in the pro-immigration groups, like, well, that's technically true, but it's less than 1% of all Medicaid spending, they say. So yeah, some money goes to people who aren't technically eligible citizens, but it's only 1%. That 1%, $27 billion.
Yeah. With a B.
With a B. And that's money that the Trump bill has eliminated, and the Republicans are kind of holding fast on that. Yeah,
and here's I think the thing that Democrats have underestimated, and that is the lack of patience that a lot of people are going to have for these kinds of subsidies because of the medical burdens that citizens are already facing. 41% of adults have some form of health care debt, and 100 million Americans owe approximately $220 billion in medical debt as of late 2024. So the point is, people themselves that are here, that are playing by the rules, that are in the country legally, we're born here, we're raised here, they have massive amounts of medical debt. And to say, well, you know what, too bad, we're going to take taxpayer dollars and we're going to subsidize people who shouldn't be here, that's not going to have, people aren't going to have a lot of patience for that. 14 million adults, that's 6% of adults in America, owe over $1,000 in medical debt, while around 3 million owe more than $10,000.
So, and I think that's like the whole, what does it mean to be America first, right? It means to like, let's hold up the real problems that American citizens are confronting. And as you just said, if 3 million U.S. citizens owe $10,000 or more medical debt, I mean, they're correct that the Democrats are using this phrase, there's a pending healthcare crisis. And I think that's actually something that both sides would agree on.
Right.
And so why wouldn't you then spend all resources, including tax dollars, and policy towards trying to figure out how to make healthcare more affordable for actual U.S. citizens? Why are we prioritizing people who didn't come here the right way? And oh, by the way, the states who have done so, it's been a massive failure.
Well, I was going to say, but I mean, California's figured this out. We should just look at California, because what they've done with illegals with Medi-Cal has been outstanding, right?
Well, they've made some adjustments. So there's a slight little tweak to what they're trying to let. So, like, what is Medi-Cal?
Yeah, it's the state version of assistance for medical help.
Yeah,
and they admitted and allowed illegals into that program. And things didn't go well.
Yeah, in fact, like, I mean, this is something that back in May, before this became the sticking point, like there's NPR reporting on this, like Minnesota, run by Tim Walz, California, run by Gavin Newsom. They're having to reconsider and modify their proposals because the Minnesota language is like, look, I want to do this, but they had their own budget fight. And Tim Walz had to say, look, I like this proposal, but the Republicans stood firm on this, and other things are a priority, right? Like, that is to say, things that benefit actual citizens in Minnesota, and we're not going to provide health care for free for illegal immigrants. California said, we got you, SA. And so they did, but unfortunately it has bankrupted the state. They have 1.6 million illegal immigrants who still get Medi-Cal coverage, but because they've run such massive debts, that they've said, all right, we're going to have to pause on allowing illegal immigrants to sign up. We're still going to give it to kids, but they're going to freeze enrollments for new recipients and charge premiums. And they said that will save the state $5 billion.
Yeah. And of course, what Gavin Newsom wants is the federal government to bail him out. He signed up, the state signed up for this healthcare subsidy for low-income people in California, including illegal migrants. It's effectively bankrupted the state. He has to freeze it. And now he's looking for the federal government, good luck with that, and the Trump administration, to bail them out. So this is, again, another example of somebody's got to pay for this stuff. Mm-hmm. And the people that pay for this stuff are ordinary Americans, as we pointed out, have their own healthcare challenges themselves. They're not going to be particularly sympathetic, I think, on this issue.
Well, no, by the way, in the whole like time is a flat circle, let's go back to one of the clips we played back in it's the 2020 election, it's actually 2019. All the Democrats running for office raised their hand and said, our plan will pay for illegal immigrants to have free health care. What's Gavin Newsom probably going to do? Run for president.
Yeah.
So for him, it doesn't have to be this hypothetical, I would support a plan that would do that. He would say, I have done that. So, he's not dumb, Gavin Newsom, I don't think in that way. So it's instructive to say this is something the Democratic primary base obviously supports. It's one of the reasons why I think these members of Congress who also have future political aspirations, they're supporting a position that seems financially untenable, but clearly popular within their party.
Their base, yeah.
And Gavin Newsom offers a proof of concept that, like, it's probably not going to be good. So you can understand why Republicans are kind of hanging tough on this. We can't afford to do this.
Yeah. So, well, okay, California, all right, maybe they didn't figure out, but the British certainly have, right? The United Kingdom. I mean, they've got that great healthcare system, the National Health Service. They're always bragging about it. We were talking about this earlier. The Olympics was at the 2012 London Olympics. They actually, in the opening ceremonies, in addition to talking about the Magna Carta and great English history, they actually called out the enormous success, in their words, of the National Health Service. Certainly they figured this issue out when it comes to migrants, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize Peter Pan was actually a big allegory for the support of the NHS. Like the Nana is like the big government state or something.
Right.
No, but I mean, they've seen a significant increase in terms of wait times for healthcare.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why they attribute it to that, and like they've seen decrease in terms of outcomes and increase in terms of wait times. And they would say it's because of the massive influx of migrants. There's even a phrase called healthcare tourism that England has seen a significant uptick in, because people know they can come there and they will receive healthcare, and the English residents are kind of fed up with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a global problem, and everybody who wants to think there's an easy solution, there is no easy solution. The easy solution is simply saying, look, if you're in the country illegally, you're not going to get subsidized healthcare. And that's the bottom line. So the question becomes, why are the Democrats prepared to go to the mat on this particular issue? It seems like it's not a winner. I think the polls consistently show the American people are fed up with illegal immigration. They certainly don't want to subsidize their health care. So why are they going to the mat? And, you know, part of the question you have to ask is why? Because illegals aren't supposed to vote. I don't know that they're voting in large numbers. So why are they actually going to the mat for illegals on this particular issue?
Is it not just because it's something that Democratic primary voters support?
I think they support it. The base supports it, but there's an interesting side component to that, and that is the presence of immigrants and illegal immigrants give the Democrats an enormous power base that is kind of a hidden power base. Again, they can't vote per se, at least legally, but what they do matter in is the apportionment of congressional districts. Because the U.S. Census is required not just to count citizens, anybody who lives in a district, whether you're there legally, illegally, you were born and raised there, it doesn't matter. It counts. And so what's happened is that the state of California has 11 more congressional districts because of the presence of migrants living in the state of California. That's more than 33 other American states are represented by migrants, and that includes legal migrants, by the way. If you only count illegals in California, they still have more congressional representation than 13 U.S. states. So this is a means of political power to people in California, the state of Illinois, the state of New York, where they want illegals because it gives them that presence not only in congressional representation, it also gives them more money in block grants, government grants, and things like that. That's, I think, the reason they're really going to bat on this issue.
Okay, I promise I was listening to you because I even wrote stuff down. So this is, you're not repeating this for me. You are repeating it for the people who maybe they can't quite keep up with Schweizer when he's going full anti-immigrant tilt. So, but what you just said is that migrants in Congress or in California represent so many people, and partly because California is offering free health care to migrants, whether they're illegal or not or whatever. And that's given them more representation than 33 states. And even if you just count the illegals, how many states is it?
What did I say? It was 13.
So by offering free health care to illegal immigrants, Gavin Newsom runs a state, and California has much more say in Congress than other states than it should.
Absolutely.
Right?
And the thing about it is you get those additional 11 congressional seats. Think about that. If there were no migrants in California whatsoever, they would have that many fewer congressional seats. If you got rid of the illegals, you're talking about 13 states that have fewer representatives than they do in California. That's an enormous boost. And that's why I think they're going to Matt.
And not only is it a boost to California from a political power standpoint, it's a boost to Gavin Newsom specifically. We are actually launching a new podcast here at the Government Accountability Institute with Susan Crabtree, famous author. And one of the first things that we talk about on that podcast is how Gavin Newsom is boosting his own political profile because he's leading this redistricting charge. They're giving more seats to even Democrats. But the point is that number is bigger. They can do this because of the illegal immigrants.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They have a vested political interest. Even though they can't legally vote for them, they help them by giving them more congressional power. That's just California. You look at other states like Illinois, for example, and New York, the same thing applies. So let me just ask you in closing, how long do you think the shutdown's going to go on? Is it going to be October the 15th when the military payroll is due? And if the government shut down, the military is not going to get paid. Is that going to be the trigger that leads to some kind of compromise?
So I've seen some reporting that said that they've looked at, this Department of War has looked at ways to use some of the funding that's already been allocated as a way to make sure certain key priorities continue to be funded. So I'm not saying that nobody's going to get paid October 15th, but they clearly have been planning for this. When J.D. Vance talked about it, he used the phrase weeks a few different times. So it would not shock me. Again, watch it reopen by the time this podcast comes out. But it would not shock me because I think the Republicans seem to be like Russ Vogt. Like, no, here's the stuff we want to get rid of. We took a shot at this earlier. This might be our best chance. And since we're all going to go back and restore the funding anyway, if you get a furlough or whatever, this might be our best chance to fundamentally downsize some of these federal agencies. So it's not just cutting male prostitutes in Haiti. It's cutting some of the aspects of the deep state, which, by the way, we have to actively fight every day to get our stuff done.
Yeah.
And, we're going to stand strong in an anti-illegal immigrant, pro-U.S. citizen position, which we feel really good about, and they voted for us for that reason in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to keep watching this. I agree with you. I think that it's probably going to drag on for weeks. There could be some agreement struck. I hope that agreement does not come at the expense of fiscal responsibility, which is trying to deal with this issue. I hope we don't get a cave by Republicans in the Senate. And I hope that Trump and others hold them into account to make sure that this issue is not something that we give away.
It's a bizarre alignment of incentives for both parties, right?
Yeah.
Like the Republicans get to look financially tough and pro-U.S. citizen,
yeah,
and the Democrats get to be pro illegal immigrant and look like they're fighting the Trump agenda. So kind of status quo seems like it benefits everybody at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty good assessment. Well, we appreciate you as always taking the time to listen to this podcast. We know your time is valuable. Please do go to thedrilldown.com. You can see some of the research and the work that we're doing, and please do subscribe to this podcast. We really do appreciate it when you do. Thanks again. Until next time.